Well, thank you for being here once again. We're going to continue our discussion regarding the dark and abusive leadership. And this is the second part of the series of three lectures regarding the issue. And at this point, I would like to thank Innova Indirect Project for giving me the opportunity to talk to you once again. Well, before start talking about abusive leadership, let's see what emotional abuse is and which are the factors that determine the emotional abuse, um, which are the distinguishing features of mobbing. The first one is that mobbing is associated with the repetition of a hostile behavior, and thus a single incident is not considered as a mobbing. We have to, it's important, uh, a constant repetition of negative behavior to exist in order to characterize a behavior as mobbing. The second critical factor of mobbing is the uneven distribution of power, and implying that at least one person involved is not capable to defend himself. And this is the second critical factor to determine whether there is an abusive or not. The third one is the intent of pleasure of the mobbing, of the emotional abuse. Uh, this whole action of being abused actually ends up to a physical or psychological or social gain of the one that provokes with his power um, the mobbing. So the perpetrator intends to maximize the result from this conflict, from this abusement. And the fourth one is the various of negative actions involved, which include victims' reputation, performance, and duties and communications and social life, meaning that both the mobbing, the bullying from a co-worker to other, the emotional abuse leads to manipulation and a clear impact of this behavior to the victim's reputation, performance, duties, communication, etc., etc. So the general definition of mobbing is a synthesis of four things. The first one is the repetition of the action. The second one is psychological or physical or any kind of pleasure that is taken from this action, from the one part. The third one is the incapability of the at least one part to defend itself, and the other one is the clear impact of this behavior to one person's reputation and work in general. This bullying, this abuse can take several forms. Could be verbal, could be social, could be physical, or through internet. But I would like to stress out and try to make you understand that Some people are more vulnerable to bullying, to mobbing, because they are very sensitive and have a low confidence. So this could be the easy victims, the victims of um, mobbing and bullying within the organization. So the nature of bullying in the workplace starts from various and serious stress factors and goes through disappointment, and this disappointment release emotion, and that emotions and those emotions lead to psychological terror that one person practices to the other. The results, as we have said earlier, are various and could lead to isolation, stigmatization, and voluntary unemployment, and difficulty to adjust to society from a point and further on. In any case, the act of bullying or mobbing or abuse has a severe impact on the actual life and the working life of the individual, and produces the feeling of despair, anxiety, the emotion, the feeling of injustice, and finally, it could lead to or cause to psychiatric and psychosomatic effects such as hyperactivity, depression, compulsion, and even greater illnesses, more severe illnesses. And taking under examination um, or looking in general, um, the way we're working today and the way we are handling our relationships today might give us a clue that we sometimes are driving our colleagues or even ourselves, mainly our colleagues, to the state of injustice, to the state of anxiety and despair and other psychiatric and psychosomatic effects, meaning that we are practicing abuse. And the result is the declining of organization of the teams, and the teams are losing coherence, and the teams are losing solidarity, and people are paid without doing any actual work. The harassment, on the other hand, can be sexual. This is also a result of the strength of the power that we have gained in the organization, and the influence that we have gained in the organization, and it could lead also to harassment, which is not only sexual but also physical and psychological. Let's focus on those special forms of abusive leadership, and we're going to be more focused now. The dark triad of dark leadership is narcissism, Machiavellism, and psychopathy. Let's talk about those three factors of dark leadership. First of all, we have to make clear that a leader can, has the charisma of the characteristics of being an actual leader. And this is the most important thing that we have to understand. Usually, people that have the power, and usually that people that can influence other people in the organization, could be dark leaders could use their power and their effectiveness and their um, influence towards their personal purposes and goals. So narcissism is the first pillar of dark leadership. Um, Defining narcissism is the unrealistic self-assessment of being great, of personal excellence, and narcissists have a false image of themselves which is bigger than we can imagine to themselves, and they think that they have fantasies about gaining unlimited success and power, and they think themselves as unique as the gifts of the nature of God to the world, and therefore they require excessive admiration and continuous cautions. Narcissists believe that they are the center of the world, and they think they're nice, and they're looking to themselves through the mirror, and they're proud of themselves, and they are the center of the world. And what they expect you to do is to say yes, sir, and to obey, and to do whatever they say because themselves are the center of the world. And everybody has automatically to match their expectations and achieve their goals. And imagine if you don't post a like in their Facebook or social media statement. And imagine if you don't approve their behavior, then you will become their worst enemy. And maybe then you will face the fear of the narcissist leader who will think that you are the worst enemy and you don't admire and you don't acknowledge and you don't understand how great they are. So this vanity and this arrogance is quite clear to us. And those narcissists lack of empathy and they just want to exploit others. And this inflated sense of self-image is their actual worth, and their self-confidence is mm, trying to go through a very tight and difficult balance between the image and the reality. So they have low self-confidence, very fragile self-confidence, and those who are setting themselves against that inflated image could be their opponents. Because, as I have said earlier, the narcissists expect us to do whatever they say, and they want us to say just yes, sir, and nothing else. So, the narcissists also are characterized by extroversion and are associated negatively with affability. And moreover, they have goals and they're pretty capable of doing things, but they're doing all those things for themselves. and their creativity is always turning around um, themselves and their false image and their generosity and their scarcity and their care and their interest are only to express their self-image. And please try to understand or try to imagine or try to self-acknowledge if, if you as workers, as leaders, as managers are seeking to get a yes sir from subordinates. If you as leaders, as workers are setting yourself or your image in front of everything else, then you might be a narcissist. So if you want everything to bow against you, then you have to deep think deeper and reassess your behavior and your behavior in the organization. So the vulnerable narcissist is has a fragile self-esteem, and he wants to be loved, and he wants to be admired. And I will ask you directly: do you want to be loved? Do you want to be admired? Are you provoking this love and admiration, or do you accept the different or whatever is against your image or your way of working? Well, the consequences of narcissism are extremely harsh. Um, this unstoppable self-esteem, as pointed out earlier, has a serious impact on trust, on how we work to each other, on how we bond to each other, on how we cooperate with each other. The second pillar of the dark triad is psychopathy. This is a behavior where the psychopath leader, the psychopathic leader, um, does not care about the impact of their decision, even if this impact is against the law. They don't have empathy, they don't have anxiety. The psychopath leader wants what he has to do, what he wants to do, despite any other factor. They don't feel embarrassed, they don't feel um, that they should follow the rules and the procedures. They do what they want to do, like there is no punishment for their actions. Of course, the psychopathy leader, the psychopath leader, also has a very strong impact on the way the organization works. And the psychopath leader has a severe impact on the way the leadership is exercised and practiced. There won't be a psychopath leader practicing none other form of leadership but the abusive leadership or the leadership of the one part, the leadership um, the one the one leader, the undemocratic one. The third pillar is Machiavellism of the dark triad. Machiavelli was a philosopher of the Mid Ages, and he said two things. The first one is that the purpose is bigger than the mean, saying that, implying that you can use whatever mean you want in order to achieve your goal. And the second thing that he wrote about and said is that it's better to be feared than loved, implying that fear is the ultimate um, mean of leadership. So the Machiavellism, the Machiavellist leader is the one that decepts and manipulates colleagues and followers and employees and subordinates in order to achieve his goal, his personal goal. The Machiavellist is characterized by lack of empathy, has very low moral standards, and he's willing to manipulate and exploit others and focus exclusively on his own goals. But on the other hand, um people that are Machiavellists can often make better negotiations because they have a clear view of the scope and their purposes. So, um, Machiavelli and Machiavellism is a way to manipulate the behavior of the employees, of subordinates, using the power, the strength, and the influence that you might gain as a leader. But this manipulation always ends not to the common goals, but to the personal goals that we might have set. And at this point, again, I would like to ask you, do you manipulate your colleagues? Are you lying to your colleagues in order to fulfill your purpose? This is something that we have to talk